Okay. Vedanta, are you there?
Hi, Bede. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, how are you going? Now, I think
good.
Good. So I think what we're going to do is I just want to start with a quote from Swami Dayananda as to what thinking is, and then we'll go from there. Okay?
Sounds good.
You don't need positive thinking, you need right thinking. You don't need negative thinking, you don't need positive thinking, you need right thinking. Just thinking which covers the reality of things. That which makes you just be alive to what is. That is what thinking is. It is not positive thinking or negative thinking, or the swinging between the two. Thinking is what is required, and therefore no positive thinking is going to fix up this problem until the person really understands the problem first. The problem is not there, really speaking. In the problem is the solution, like in a jigsaw puzzle. Now, there's a lot of talk in the spiritual world that, that spirituality is all about transcending thought. Have you heard that one?
Yes, it completely baffles you, and it actually confuses.
In one sense it does, because what they say is that, that thinking is sort of the bad guy here, and that what you do is you just simply somehow get into a sort of a quiet state, and then reality is going to pop out somehow. Now, the thing is that, continuing on from our conversation, when we're talking about the fact that people and things never upset us or hurt us, they're only instrumental in revealing a hurt or a pain that's already there, that is a thought, isn't it? It's a thought that, in other words, it's being alive to a fact. It's not positive thinking, it's not negative thinking, but it's being alive to a fact that exists in our life.
Indeed, it is. But, only when you point it out, I realize that actually it was a thought. I mean, I didn't stand still at the idea that it was a thought.
Yes, and in Vedanta, everything you look at is a thought. So I'm having a Venita thought now because I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
So everything that I'm looking at.
I'm having a big thought looking at you. Yes, okay.
That's it. So when you look at a tree, so everything is in mind in that sense. So what we need to do is we need to have thinking that covers reality. And the thing that we're doing here is what we're doing is we want to simply come alive to facts. That is one of the most spiritual things you can do, is to simply become alive to facts.
That does sound so nice and peaceful.
Well, it doesn't, at least it's not this, to come alive to facts isn't this trying, I'm going to try. It's simply becoming alive to facts. Now, I was having a conversation with my teacher a while ago, and she said something that this is what I want to go over. She said something very interesting. She said to me, experience can only teach us two things. It can, first of all, teach us that no experience, no object can give us happiness. That's the first thing. So she says, this is what we need to learn from experience, that it can never give us happiness. And the second thing is she says, it can also tell us how well we've assimilated the teaching or the vision. Okay, so that's the two things that experience can actually give us. And so what I want to look at is this first one, because the thing is that in terms of just our life, what happens is that we really do believe that we can get happiness if we can get or grab or acquire certain things. If we can acquire more friends, more money, more status, more love, etc., etc. So we're very, very focused on, because of this basic fundamental problem that we've been discussing, which is samsara.
Yeah.
Which is a condition where we feel that we're inadequate. You know what I mean? Or we feel that we're insignificant, inferior. We feel insecure, so we feel very, very fearful, and we feel kind of empty and inadequate. So we need to fill ourselves up. And because of this basic problem, what happens is we become extremely fascinated and very, very caught up in getting anything that will relieve that intense self-dissatisfaction, which is always sitting there in the background.
I am thinking whether in the last 3 days, whether I consciously did that, did I consciously look for objects outside? And yes, it's almost a compulsive behavior. What you are saying is correct. You're not even conscious that you're looking outside and you're looking for it for happiness.
No, we've been so habituated to it. It's like, have you ever been in a stinking factory for and after a while you don't smell the smell? Or when you go to school and you're taken into the science lab for the first time, you smell everything, but a week later you're not aware of it because you've become acclimatized to it.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. So it almost is so natural to look outside for happiness.
And there's also a very convincing experience that is where happiness comes from. This is the thing. It's a very convincing experience. Now, the whole point here is that often the basis of our thinking is experience. We take the experience that we receive, we take that as a fact. We take that as the truth. And that's the basis. Now, I just want to tell you a story. When I was 11 years old, I was told the rather tragic news that my father died. And there was all of us kids there, and we were in incredible anguish, as you could imagine.
Yes.
Now, and a very interesting thing happened. They knew that we as children loved the game of Monopoly, the people who told us. So what they did was they got the Monopoly set out and they forced us to start playing. Now, guess what happened within 5 minutes? Within 5 minutes, I'd forgotten entirely the fact that my father had been killed and died. I was caught up in winning and losing in the game of Monopoly. And in fact, I was winning. This was very, very satisfying too. I was winning the game because if you know what Monopoly is, it's like a...
Yes, I know.
Yeah, it's like a game where you accumulate houses and you make money and all of that stuff. Now, isn't it interesting that because I was totally absorbed, because I was totally distracted, the enormity of what had happened and the pain associated with it, guess what happened to it?
Tell me, I can't imagine you were playing Monopoly.
I wasn't aware of it. I was simply absorbed in the Monopoly game. So
yes.
It didn't last very long. It was about 20 minutes. But the thing was, isn't it interesting that when we get absorbed, and in our culture, what happens is we're given a promise of many things and we're given distractions. So what happens is our attention, because of the pain, our attention is, have you ever heard that expression, driven to distraction?
Yes. It's like an escape, isn't it? You didn't confront it. You escaped from it.
That's right. It's an escape. So what happens is our culture provides us with many things, many forms of entertainment, many forms of like drugs, recreational drugs, alcohol. It provides us with various pursuits that are important, status, power, accumulation of material. All of these things, it provides us with the activity of acquiring, of getting, in order to be happy. That's why when we say I'm unhappy, why? Oh, because something happened. We say I'm unhappy because something happened. And
yes.
It feels like the experience, if we go by the experience, does it actually, in terms of experience, is that true? In terms of experience, that if someone acts in a rejecting way or you lose a lot of money and you're upset about it, the experience is that I'm unhappy because that happened.
Yes, so it seems to be, I recognize, when you say these words, I'm looking back and saying, do I recognize in my own life? And that is very true. I mean, it's always when something happened that I felt happy, or when something didn't happen, I sometimes felt unhappy.
Exactly.
It had to do with the happening. It had to do with something happening or not happening.
Yeah, we think there's a direct cause and effect relationship between our happiness and what happens.
That's the logical conclusion, isn't it?
Based on experience.
Correct. Yes.
Based on experience. Now, Swami Dayananda talks about the fact that we have the experience that the sun is moving across the sky.
Yes.
Now, we know because of the advances of science that experience isn't true. That doesn't mean to say we can't enjoy the experience, but the thing is the experience, that is not what is happening. Now, what Vedanta suggests is the experience of ourself, who and what we think we are, is an experience, but it's not the truth.
Wow. You started talking about thoughts, and experience is also a thought. So you are telling me that all what I'm thinking is not the truth.
That's exactly right. What happens is that all the thinking based on our experience of ourselves, and then when we have thoughts about that, all of that thinking is not based on, in terms of Vedanta, what is. It's based on the experience. So what happens is that if I manage to acquire something and then I feel that it makes me happy, that is the experience. The thing is that what we find is this. When we want something, we really want something, we're full of desiring. And then what happens is as soon as we get what we want, the desire gets satisfied. So we're no longer desiring, we're no longer craving, we're no longer striving. And the very moment that we're no longer wanting and desiring something, the mind becomes quiet, and then it becomes a reflecting medium of something else. We become happy.
Yes.
We think that the happiness came from the acquisition. Now, if it's true that happiness comes from people and things should always make us happy. If happiness exists, if there's a thing called happiness and that it actually belongs to somebody or something, then it should make us happy all the time. But if you notice that you might love someone very deeply and intensely at one moment, but at another moment, it's all gone.
Sure. That's a very common experience. I recognize that. But I mean, I am thinking, what else? I mean, if this object, indeed, it's like having a good piece of chocolate and feeling very satisfied. You do feel happy when you have a satisfying piece of chocolate if you like it.
Yes, because you're having an experience, and when you're having an experience, you're released from desiring for just a short moment. Now, here's the problem. You see, we think that the solution to our life is something other than ourselves. This is the fundamental thing. Even if we call that something other than ourselves God or a spiritual experience, a lot of people, for example, can't understand the Vedantic view that any experience, that any spiritual experience you have, like every other experience, it comes and then it goes. So this idea that we're going to get freedom, we're going to acquire freedom, we're going to get it, this idea is an erroneous idea. This idea that we can get happiness is also an erroneous idea. The fundamental thing in Vedanta is that the only way to happiness is to be happy, not to get happiness.
You know, when you say it, it sounds so correct. It's almost the aha moment for me, which says, oh my God, you could probably be right. I have been doing all the wrong. I've been trying to buy happiness, like that Beatles song, you know, money ain't going to buy you love kind of thing. So I've been trying to buy happiness all this time.
Yeah, well, the thing is, that's for all of us. The fact of the matter is, one of the first things that we have to admit that we suffer from dependency on other people and things and ideas for our happiness. This is not, it's not something for any self-condemnation. It's just simply something to recognize that this condition that we're in is that, you see, if the only source, if we don't discover a source of security, composure, and contentment, if we don't discover a source that is independent of objects other than ourselves, we can't help but compulsively go towards objects. We can't help but have an extreme passion for objects and things. Can't help it. It doesn't matter what spiritual books we read. It doesn't matter what we think about. The fact of the matter is, if we can't find, to a relative degree, some kind of, as an individual, some kind of security, peace and contentment within ourselves that is independent of objects and other people, we cannot help but obsessively and compulsively strive to get happiness from objects and other people.
Okay, so are you saying that my own behavior is something which is compulsive because I simply have not discovered this source?
Precisely. Remember how we talked about when we really know something, right? What happens is that if I really understood, at the moment we have a passion for objects other than ourselves. Agreed?
Yes, I fully agree. I recognize that fully.
Right. Now, and even though these objects and people never deliver, it doesn't matter how much we hope, no object or person will ever deliver the promise. Have you noticed that? No matter how, even though it's never delivered, we still keep trying.
You know, what you say is so true, and yet I keep going, and keep compulsively, indeed, looking for it outside. I recognize exactly. So you say that all these objects will never deliver what I'm looking for.
Never. Now, because you have a passion for things other than yourself. That's the condition. Now, in Vedanta, we talk about one of the important qualifications for this study, and that is a dispassion. In other words, we don't have this passionate passion for things other than ourselves. But this dispassion has to be based on an understanding. We have to come to learn that the very things that we hope and wish that will give us happiness won't. Now, when my teacher said this to me, when she said the main thing, the only thing that the experience can teach me, the only thing it can teach, the two things, but the first thing is that no experience can ever give me happiness. It sounds so negative. It sounds so negative, doesn't it?
It does, because, that dismisses all the happy moments in my life and say they're not happy. So that doesn't seem concurrent with my experience again. So There's a bit of a chicken egg problem there.
Right. So it becomes a very important thing. You see, while we're a slave to this dependency, while we have passion for objects, until we develop a dispassionate attitude, which is based on an understanding, and only understanding can release us from this hypnotic, compulsive belief. You see, imagine if in order to breathe, I had to get social approval. Just imagine that in order to actually get oxygen into my system, I had to get social approval. Now, how important would social approval become for me?
Oh, extremely. Top of the charts.
I'll do anything.
Exactly.
I will say anything. Because people are horrible. Because the thing is that dependency, out of that dependency comes a tremendous drive. So the only thing possible that can ever free us from this dependence on objects. We have to clearly see, we have to learn this lesson. And this is the starting point of Vedanta, by the way. You can forget, you see, basically, without a dispassionate attitude, you remember how we talked about an attitude as the basis of an attitude is understanding? If I do not have an attitude, if I don't have an attitude towards things other than myself, people and things, if I don't have a dispassionate attitude, there's no possibility that I'm ever going to want to kind of, in one sense, remain with myself, as myself.
So, it's just struck me that it's so interesting that you say dispassion. I mean, I was looking passionately outside, but Vedanta doesn't seem to say look passionately inside. They're saying get dispassionate. So
that's right.
It scares me on one side. It gets me the feeling that, I mean, my whole power is in my passion. So are you disempowering me? That it scares me, this dispassion word.
Yeah, now, it doesn't mean, now just to be clear, dispassion doesn't mean not being involved with life, not having good friends and all of that sort of stuff and enjoyments. That's some sort of kooky spiritual stuff that Swami Dayananda has set aside extremely well. All that dispassion, we're talking about desires. You see, Swami Dayananda puts it this way. I would like to have a car. I want a car, right? Is one thing. He said there's going to be no problem with that. But I want a car in order to be happy, there's going to be a problem for that. So there's two kinds of desires. One is just simply a human desire. And Vedanta doesn't deal with these, what we call just normal human desires. Just I want something.
Yes.
Its specific target is those desires where we think our life and happiness completely depend upon other people or things. They are called binding desires because they literally tie us up. They rivet our attention. We are completely under their sway or under their spell, and they determine entirely our experience of life.
So, but then when you come back to this word dispassion, and so you can be completely involved in wanting something, but then what is dispassion? I am confused.
Okay. Now, what we mean by dispassion is that all at the moment, I don't want to go into how dispassion comes about, but basically,
okay.
if I am free from the notion, and I'm free from this dependency, this attitude of dependency, you know what I mean, that I'm totally involved in. If I can look at objects so that if I can remain with myself and reasonably happy within myself to a relative degree in the presence of objects that please me and in the presence of objects that displease me, I am dispassionate.
Ah.
And you see, this is what which we'll be talking about later, but in Vedanta, Swami Dayananda talks about a contemplative disposition. And it's a disposition, it's an inclination of mind where we actually are drawn to and like being with ourselves as we are. So that we basically have, as an individual, the whole growth part of Vedanta is as an individual, we become composed, secure, and content within ourselves as an individual, independent of what is occurring and what is here and what isn't here. Whether things that we find that we like or dislike, we still remain, relatively speaking, I'm talking about a relative happiness now, I'm not talking about an absolute happiness, but the growth aspect that Swami Dayananda talks about that is absolutely necessary for us to understand Vedanta is that we as an individual become, within ourselves, reasonably content, peaceful, and secure. Does that make sense?
it is completely logical what you are saying. So your flow of reasoning is impeccable, but it is rather unbelievable that there is something which is within myself which will make me independent of the happening and not happening.
I'm talking relatively speaking. What I'm saying is that the only way we can be released from the stranglehold of this obsession and dependence on objects for happiness is to find a source of security, peace, and happiness somewhere else.
I fully agree, because that is correct. Absolutely. So it is not in objects. It has to be somewhere else. It's not in objects.
That's right. It has to be some. You see, we can't find happiness in things other than ourselves. The only thing that is left is ourselves. That's the only thing that's left. And what we'll do is, when we come back next time, we'll go more into this. But all I wanted to do is just to recap what my teacher told me was that the only thing experience can teach us is that it can never give us happiness. We can never get happiness from experience. And this includes spiritual experiences. They're all transitory. Anything that comes is going to go. Our life has come, it's going to go. Our friendships have come, whatever comes together is going to go. Whatever nice feeling we're having is going to go. Everything is coming and going. This is what experience is. By its nature, it comes and it goes. To try and find security in something that's moving and shifting so fast all the time is rather a fruitless effort. But this is the fundamental basis of becoming dispassionate. In other words, unless we have an attitude of dispassion towards other people, things, and events, what happens is that we will never be interested in any other thing than those people and events. We can't be interested. Our attention is too riveted. We won't be available for the teaching. Not possible. That's why one of the qualifications, and I'm only talking about one of them, is dispassion. Because without it, Vedanta can't possibly work.
I will, Bede, your words are so beautiful. You just dismissed every experience of mine. So that's good. And I have faith in this because it does sound correct. It appeals to my mind.
Okay. So we'll catch up. When we catch up next time, we'll go further into this. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bede. Bye.